Every country in the world has borders, boundaries. They're invisible. You can't see them. But if you look at any map, you will see that there are boundaries and borders to every country. In some cases, there may actually be physical barriers, walls or fences, perhaps a river that acts as a boundary. But what is the point of a boundary? What is the point of a barrier or these geographical lines that are around particular countries? There are many different reasons. It could be political. Why is it important to know where this country is or where that country is? For example, the two Koreas. You've got South Korea and North Korea. And in between, a demilitarized zone. It's important to know which country is which for political reasons. This one perhaps has a democratic government. This one perhaps has a totalitarian government. In certain cases, boundaries, borders are needed for security. We have to protect ourselves. We perhaps cannot let foreigners come in, or we cannot let forces come in. It could be for military reasons, to make sure that our borders are properly patrolled, that the tanks know where to go, that the soldiers know where to go. In this week's parasha, the Torah tells us what the borders of the Holy Land are, Eretz Canaan. They're not exactly the same as the borders of the land of Israel are today. They extend a little bit further up to the north, and they don't extend that far south. But the Torah is very precise in telling us what the borders of Eretz Yisrael are. And the question is, why does it do this? Why is it important to know where the Holy Land is? What exactly the shape and the size of the Holy Land is? Is it for political reasons? Is it perhaps for military reasons? This is something that's very important today in the state of Israel. We have to know exactly what the lines are. We have to know that we have neighbors in the north and neighbors in the south, neighbors to the east of us and to the west of us, the Mediterranean, to protect our borders. So perhaps was it for military reasons? Was it for political reasons? And Rashi tells us none of the above. No. Why is it important to know what the borders of the land of Israel are? Says Rashi, something really quite profound. Because there are mitzvot, there are commandments, there are precepts that only apply in the land of Israel and nowhere else. The sabbatical year, the fact that the entire country has to lie fallow, only applies in the land of Israel. To give the ma'aseh v'trumah, the different gifts from the produce, the tithe to the Levi, or the trumah to the Kohen, and many, many other laws, most of which are agricultural, only apply in the land of Israel. And therefore it is absolutely vital for a Jew to know, where is Israel? And yes, of course, to know it for political reasons or military reasons. But the main reason, says Rashi, is a religious reason. To know that this is the Holy Land, that in this land there are mitzvot that apply only in this land and nowhere else. I remember when I was young at school, occasionally we would have some family who had moved from Eretz Yisrael to stay in South Africa, and there were, of course, children with them, and they enrolled them in the school. And very often there would be somewhat of a debate in the class about why it is that so many modern Israelis are secular. And one of these kids once turned around and said, well, when we were living in the land of Israel, that in itself was the greatest mitzvah. And that exempted us from doing other mitzvot. But you who live in the diaspora, you are the ones who need to do all of these mitzvot. Actually, he was entirely wrong. In the land of Israel, there are far more mitzvot that apply than in the diaspora. In the diaspora, there are many mitzvot that we cannot do until we come to the land of Israel. And in fact, some mitzvot that we do are only to remember precepts that apply in the land of Israel. For example, the mitzvah of challah, taking a portion of the dough, which we do outside of Israel, the Talmud tells us really doesn't apply in the diaspora, but we do it to remember that such a concept exists, that there is this mitzvah of challah that applies in the Holy Land. When Jewish people started to come back to the land of Israel, and one of the first groups was a group of students of the Vilna Gaon, of the famous rabbi of Vilna, Rav Eliyahu Kramer, they began to come back to Eretz Yisrael, and now they were facing problems that they had never faced before. How did they work the land? Jews hadn't really lived in Israel in big numbers for a very long time. They hadn't really been doing agriculture. And one of the students of the Vilna Gaon, who was a rabbi from Shklov, came to the land of Israel, had a very, very difficult time, lost his wife and many of his children and grandchildren, decided that he had made a vow to himself that he would write a book about the laws of Israel. It's called Pa'at HaShulchan. And he was one of the first who wrote a book speaking about the laws of the Holy Land. We're coming back here. And this was several hundred years before political Zionism came about. We're coming back to the land of Israel. We are going to be plowing the fields. We are going to be giving tithes. We are going to be keeping the sabbatical year. How do we do it? We haven't done it for almost 2,000 years. And he was so privileged and honored to live in the land of Israel that even though he had suffered so much, he said it was all worth it just to live in the land of Israel. So when next you are visiting the Holy Land, remember that that really is the courtyard of God's palace. That is the most holy place in the world. And in that land are mitzvot that apply only there and nowhere else in the entire world. And that's why it is so vital for us to know what the borders of the Holy Land are. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.